Alright, I normally don't post a video where I ever agree in any way, shape, or form with conspiracy theorists. This should be a very big clue that this is not a good video to do. Here we go! 2005, George W. Signed into law the Real ID Act, or HR1268, or HR418. Time limits were 2008 and 2014. They kept delaying it because of obvious. Federal limits apply. Not acceptable for official federal purposes, or federal purposes, or immoral purposes. Federal officials, and in some cases out-of-state local law enforcement agencies, are not actually obligated to accept your driver's license as a form of identification if it's from another state, unless it's compliant with interstate and national standards for identification. It has to have certain minimum requirements, and that state has to comply with the draconian rule of sharing data between states. See also everybody complaining that states weren't able to prevent a mass shooting because they didn't share data. If you want real privacy or anonymity, you're not going to have high safety. Now, it doesn't have to be either or. I know it doesn't, but this is the argument as it is. Now, let's just continue here. You'll have to obtain a real ID by December 2017. It has to have a full legal name, your signature. Birth date, right on it. Gender. Oh, that's going to be an easy one to have. Helicopter. Attack helicopter. And unique identifying number, and later on it's going to require a unique ID code throughout the country. There are people from different states that have similar or identical ID numbers, so that has to go. That means you're going to have a or many digit number on your driver's license. Principal residence address, front-facing photograph of the applicant. Now I'm going to explain this quickly. This also has to include machine-readable format for two reasons. It can use barcodes, number of the beast images, bring them up in your head, QR codes, which everybody has on little cards and stuff, or smart card technology. You can also use RFID. It was offered for consideration in the rulemaking process, but wasn't included because RFID is a trigger word. Now I'm going to explain to you why you might really want to advocate for your state to invoke the rule of having machine-readable data as RFID or smart card technology or image readable like we do in the state of Oregon. We have this. We just don't have it completely compliant. I have an ID that actually has this zebra code on the back. And yeah, I ran it when I had a zebra code reader. Before a card can be issued, you have to provide the following documentation. Let's start that jokey music. Let's have fun here. A photo ID. A non-photo ID that includes your legal name and birth date. Birth certificate, Obama jokes. Insert them below. Have fun. Documentation of the birth date. Documentation of legal status and social security number. Documentation showing name and principal residence address. Now I'm going to bring up something here. Alternatives. You don't have to do this. For domestic air travels by the year 2020, October 1st. That's the only thing this actually directly affects that is a real thing here. You have to have this compliant license or other federally approved documents that will be accepted. Here's the short list. A passport or the passport card, which doesn't require any of this crap on it for the most part. It requires less information on the face. Think slowly. Or a military ID card. Now look up military ID card below. They've been standardized because it's the military. Passports are literally U.S. government issued U.S. citizen ID cards and ID documentation. This is your papers aren't valid kind of thing. Now think slowly. It's $200 to get, last time I checked, $200 to get a passport in the United States. It has the same requirements, but it's more expensive. What does it have on it? It doesn't require all of this data, because it doesn't require you to have a residence address on it. If you want more privacy, get a frackin' passport or the passport card. I'm recommending you get the passport because it doesn't look like ID. It requires a cop or anybody who's looking at it to actually open a little book. It seems more intrusive and they're less willing to do it. Number one, psychological. Number two, it doesn't have as much data to leak. Number three, you want it machine readable. You want the RFID mark of the beast with 2 backs. Why? Because you're getting, look up the beast with 2 backs. It's a euphemism for what's happening to you, sand and salt. If it's machine readable, the police officer won't read back audibly in a populated area your social security number and your name. You can say, I don't want you to read my information aloud, please read it by data reader. Well, I'd like to confirm things. No, because you don't have to. This is a very important thing to say here. One of the things I found out about, except for double checking that you're not drunk or crazy or stupid, usually stupid, is when a police officer is asking this information, it's because they don't want to sit there and read the thing. If it's machine readable, they don't have to ask anything. They just run your card and see if you're wanted or something. They instantly get your file on the screen and get it the hell out of the way. Now, think about this as a sovereign citizen for a minute. I mean this really. There's less leakage of your information if you want privacy. If you say, for privacy reasons, I want you to read the card through your system. I'll hold still. They're going to have it on a phone-looking thing. They'll read it. They'll get your data up on the screen. They can run this faster. It's done. Convenience. If I'm saying that, I'm not kidding. Number one. Number two, if you get the ID card that's literally a little passport card and have no other ID, it's illegal not to accept it, and it has less data. They may change the passport requirements to have your primary residence, but for a passport, that's a stupid thing to require because it lasts 10 years and it's used for international travel primarily. It's still legally acceptable, which means you leak less information. They still have the same database, right? Well, here's the fun part. Digital images of each document you provide for your driver's license and or state ID card, histories, motor vehicle violations, suspensions, points on license will be stored for each state DMV database and shared through this system. They don't do that through your passport. They are legally compelled to accept a passport. It's prima facie evidence of identity. They are allowed to be told, for privacy reasons, I want you to run the data. They don't have to. They can still read it aloud, but they're staring at it. Next, it's stupid not to run it, and if a cop is literally not just messing with you, he's just going to run the data. And in the case of the passport, it is an RFID card data recording. If you request the smart function, do it. It's worth it. Because you say, here's my passport. You don't even have to open it if you don't want to. Please don't read the information aloud for privacy reasons, and I'm not going to respond to any questions. I'm not legally required to. Here's my ID. Please run it as an RFID scan to detect it, because it's literally, I love saying this, it's literally a good excuse for them not to open it. Which means they go boop, and it just gives you the data, and it gives current information. And you can request, this is something I found out, you can go through the passport people and say, I'd like to update my picture because I look a little different than when I got my passport. Instead of getting a renewal on your ID, they just update the database. So when it's run at the, by the passport scanner, it gets the data up. Because you're giving them, this is also, I'm giving you permission to read it. Because if they can hold it and run it, you're giving permission. Now, why is this useful? Let's continue. Domestic air travels, real ID compliant licenses or other approved data, get a damn passport, required after October 2020. Before then, it doesn't really affect anything unless somebody's being a hard-nose about it. And if you have state-issued ID, it's really going to be causing an interstate incident at that point if they say, I'm sorry, you're in Oregon, we don't take California ID because you're not really Americans. That's not going to happen. If somebody's being a real jackass about it, that's one thing. If you're trying to go onto a federally controlled space, yeah, you're going to have national ID. That's it. The main thing is they're basically declaring by the year 2020 interstate air travel to be federally controlled and federally restricted, border patrol style stuff. Get over it. Because by doing this other backdoor, you'll be providing less data leakage. All right? And here's the fun part, because of the stupid ID requirements. If you get a passport, and just get a state-issued ID card or a state-issued driver's license. You can request to get the international piece of paper that says you have a driver's license. You can request that instead, which means on a national level you have an ID card and a driver's license that has less data to mess with. But you have to do this if you want to do this right. You literally say, I want you to have the RFID thing in it, because it's less intrusive than the others. Reading an RFID like that can be made secure, sort of, because the system has to, at their end, allow the data retrieval. It's just an ID number at that point within the passport. This is older tech in the passport than the new stuff in your ID card you get from the state. Okay? A federal agency may not accept for any official purposes a driver's license or identification card issued by a state to any person unless the state is meeting these requirements specified in the Real ID Act. The Real ID Act now directly imposes specific federal standards on the states because they were inconsistent. You'd have people getting an ID card from California and saying it's not a real ID card, not because it's not real ID, but because it looked different and they couldn't identify it. By standardizing the formatting and getting everybody to stop arguing, you're going to go through less trouble. But it provides too much information. Again, for driver's license, I don't drive a car, I don't care, but if I did, I'd want to get a state-issued ID that is completely compliant, and then just carry my passport and carry a piece of paper that says I am allowed to drive a car. Oh, I don't have my driver's license with me. You have to. No, I don't. Here's a piece of paper that's accepted internationally that says I am a driver and it identifies me uniquely. Here's my insurance, proof of it, and registration. There's lots of ways of getting around the insurance and registration thing. You can run an LLC leasing the car to yourself. The LLC owns the car. Your name isn't on it. Look up J.J. Luna's How to Be Invisible. Do you want privacy and convenience? It's going to be inconvenient in the beginning, but once you build it up, it's convenient. I carry a passport. I do not carry state-issued ID. I have state-issued ID, and rather nicely, it got chemically screwed up at one point where the only thing readable is actually the zebra code on the back, and it's outdated. But when they run it, and they do, it brings up all my data. The rest of it's a passport. It's outdated too, and it accidentally had the RFID chip damaged. So then I'm in deep trouble. But if they could just scan it, it comes up as a database. They don't have to read anything off. Anyway, that was after 2011, so you've been dealing with this problem for a few years already. Because the United States has no national identification card, now it does, and because the widespread use of cars, driver's licenses issued by the states, because the states determine your right concerning the car, not federal. They've been used as a de facto standard form of national identification within the country. Non-drivers get voluntary ID cards for the same reason. You can also get one from like Walgreens. But each state sets its own rules and criteria, not anymore. And requirements of what proves who you are, not anymore. It's all standardized because y'all complained about people in California getting IDs, driver's licenses, but saying I'm not a national citizen, and then you said that they were voting. This eliminates the ability of that. Hey, I'm not the one who made the meme about Hillary getting a bunch of ballot stuffing illegal votes from illegal aliens. You guys did. You bitched about that? This happened. That's why it got bipartisan. Everybody supported it. Remember their names and don't vote for them. Anyway, here we go. States must share their databases domestically and internationally through the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators. The only system available with the capability of satisfying this requirement is done by one company. Follow the money. And they're under contract with state motor vehicle licensing places in only 3 places. Every other state has to come up with a method for it. The easiest method to do it is just have them do an RFID tag. Hey, it's one hammer blow away from being dead. Think about it. Or just stick it in the microwave. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.